Billy, how's it coming so far, just in terms of the philosophy you wanted to put forth this year in terms of playing mentally fast as much as physically fast?
I think having 2 practices on Tuesday and Wednesday and one today, we've got had 5 practices, and these guys have done a really, really good job. They've worked hard. They're picking up on the things that we're looking to do. We had a chance to talk about trying to play with better pace, better tempo, play faster, the off season with a lot of them. So I think they expect that coming in here. But, as time goes on, you guys get sore, you get tired. It's easy to kind of fall back into habits, but they've maintained, I think, a pretty good level of trying to play with some speed and quickness.
Are there any drills that you do to try to kind of coerce more of that, or anything that you're able to share about the process that you go into to try to facilitate that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. The first thing is how quickly you get the ball out of bounds. How quickly the ball guard brings the ball up the floor. But the next part is, once you do get into the front court, how quickly, guys can make reads and move and cut and do those kind of things. So they've done a good job with that so far. Again, we're playing against ourselves, so some of this stuff, is familiar with them. As it relates to, how they're trying to defend certain things, which is fine because you have to execute regardless. But for the most part, I see a group of guys that are understanding that the pace, the tempo, those kind of things.
How much scrimmaging have y'all done so far?
A lot.
What? I mean, is it restricted when you have Andre and Russell out the way it is?
No, I mean, we've got, I think, 18 guys, so it's kind of been really good where you could take a guy like Dennis and Paul and Steven, and those guys can get good reps. You have sub for those guys. Obviously it'd be great to have Russell and Andre out there, but they're not. My goal, I think, coming out of the first day we scrimmaged, I wanted to get some scrimmaging in just based on the things that we did. We did a lot of 5-on-5 yesterday in the first practice, and we probably did about 45 minutes today of 5-on-5. So some of it's controlled and some of it's just letting them play through things, trying to work on coming out of side of bounds, underneath the bounds, those kind of things. There's still obviously a lot more we've got to continually add, but for the most part, I think that I wanted these guys to be able to play, because I think with the new faces, with some different guys getting acclimated with one another, I also think, when you do drills are great in terms of a teaching point, but sometimes those drills can go out the window when you start getting 5-on-5 because things are happening so quickly. And when you're doing a drill, you can isolate it on a specific area, which is great because you can talk about the technique and the discipline and the execution of that. But can you do it when the game's going on, and make quick decisions both offensively and defensively? So that's what we wanted to try to play.
What stood out most to you about Dennis so far, now that you've had a few days to work with him, get a look at him up close?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a really good feel of how to play, really unselfish, does a really good job of distributing the basketball, and obviously he's got great speed and quickness. I think he's picked things up really well, and I think as a point guard where you've got to be verbal and you got to be vocal and you got to make sure everybody's on the same page, he's done I think a really good job of having a grasp on what we're trying to do offensively. So again, it'll be a process for him to continue to evolve in that area, but for the most part, all the things that we've been able to put in and do so far, he's really done a great job.
Do you want to keep the same groups together when you're scrimmaging?
We mix it up. We really just kind of mix the groups up because you're getting guys, you're pulling guys in and out, just getting different subs and stuff. So, we'll play different groups of guys together, different lineups and things like that. It's not the scrimmaging is not necessarily to work on, okay, let's work on this group, let's work on this group. It's just like we're just trying to get these guys playing and implement stylistically of the things that we need to do.
Would you say you kept Dennis, Steve, and Paul kind of together when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, yes, those guys have played quite a bit together, and I think Dennis, being a point guard, needs to get comfortable with those two guys in particular because they'll be on the floor quite a bit together with Russell being out. So I wanted that to happen some, but also Dennis has got to play with Patrick, he's got to play with Jeremy, he's got to be able to play with Terrence. There's a lot of guys he's going to be out there playing with, so that's when I'm less worried about the groupings of who's playing together, but more to your point, like, let's make sure these guys get a chance to touch and play with one another. Because the other thing, too, is, the guy like Raymond Felton, you want him to be as involved, as much as Dennis is with different guys playing with different guys.
Hey, Billy, Paul's obviously a great player, but last year he's coming in and everything is new and terminology is new and it's a big adjustment. Do you see a difference in terms of just his comfort level, his ownership, leadership, those sorts of things this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Paul last year coming in, one, I think there was so much he had to deal with the whole free agency in the very near future when he got here, and how long was he going to be here. I think not really knowing as teammates any of the guys on the team, but maybe knowing them through being in the NBA. So I definitely think that there was a process that he had to go through to, being in one city for his entire career before he got here. Moving house, moving family, new coaching staff, new front office, new teammates, new doctors, new trainers, new strength coaches. I mean, everything's completely new. And I think for him, he's such a great guy. He just really takes everything in and he listens and stuff. But there's no question he's obviously at this point in time much, much more comfortable than he was a year ago, all the way around, I think.
Who are you seeing on Nerlens?
Nerlens has been good. He's obviously got very good speed. He's got great hands. He's probably a guy that's, there's been a lot thrown at him with terminology and pick and rolls, different coverages, what we're doing on offense. But, he's done a really good job, I think, retaining a lot of that stuff. But I think it has been a lot for him just because I think the whole situation is completely new.
When you have a new guy like that, you've obviously seen him play, but then it's the first time you coached him. How much do you sit back and see what they do, what they can do, as opposed to what you want them to do and teach them to do?
No, I mean, I think you want to basically, create an identity and a style of play and things that you want to do, and you want those guys to do it. So, you've got to, I think, come into practice and say, this is, what we're doing defensively. This is what we're going to be doing offensively. Here are the things that we, have to do as a team as it relates to transition defense. But like to sit there and throw them out there and say, okay, well, let me just see what this guy can do away from what we're going to have to do for us to be, the best version of ourselves. I really don't do much of that. I try to let guys play with freedom, but it's not necessarily like, I'm not like saying, hey, Nerlens, let's jack up some threes to see what that looks like. Just not doing that.
Not doing that?
No. But I mean, I want him to play with inside of his game things that he knows himself as a player.
Yeah.
He knows what he can and can't do, and see the things that he is doing out there and the things he feels comfortable doing, and how effective can that be inside of what we're trying to do.
Billy, you've had a chance to see Russell play with, a bunch of different guys, whether it's Kevin or Victor and now Paul. Yeah, how do you think Paul helps Russell, and how do you think Russell helps Paul?
Well, I think the relationship that was established, both those guys probably having mutual respect for each other before last year, probably grew a lot stronger. So I think the communication part, is something that's big for those guys in terms of, I think they really benefit off of that. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that Paul can put the ball on the floor and create and make plays, it gives, I think, Russell out there with him, another playmaker, another ball handler, another creator. I think Russell, in a lot of ways can create closeout situations and space for Paul, to do a lot of things that he can do. I think Paul also, can bring the ball up the floor, can handle the ball, can play in pick and roll, can take some of that burden off of Russell too, and put him in situations where he's, getting a chance to attack some closeouts and those kind of things. So I think they both complement each other very, very well, because I think both those guys have very, very really good ball skills and things to work with offensively that they can play off of each other.
What is it like just being around Steven every day?
In terms of, what do you mean?
Just being around him. What is he like? What is it like to be around Steven?
Has an enormous amount of pride for the team. The team's really important to him. Comes in every day and tries to do the job to the best of his ability. I think takes what he does do for our team very serious. It's important to him. I think he's extremely reliable, smart, pays attention. He obviously has continued to get better and better and better, throughout the time I've been here, and probably since his rookie year. So, I mean, those things are great qualities, because we need that, because he's, a more experienced veteran guy for us.
The guy that we see, is it different than the guy that you see behind closed doors?
What do you mean? So what do you see?
Well, we see Steven's pretty easygoing and likes to joke around a little bit. But when you get him in like on an on-court setting,
He isn't doing that stuff. I mean, there's obviously, you want those guys to enjoy themselves, coming to work every day. You want them to enjoy that part of it. But when we're on the court and we're working, there's really not a lot of that. I mean, he's a very, very focused, attention to detail, concentration, ask questions, tries to talk to guys, to help guys. If something happens, there's a breakdown, he always tries to work out a way to fix it. But he's not. If you're saying that he's loose and joking around, like he's not doing that out on the court at all. He's out there and he's pretty focused on what he's got to do job wise.
So the Russell's evolved quite a bit over the last maybe 5 years or so. But you've got more guys on the perimeter oriented. Some teams not even really using centers. Now you got Steven Adams is more of a traditional type of guy, a bigger guy who plays close to the basket. How beneficial is it to have a guy like that where everybody else is changing and he's more of an older school type of center?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's happened for big guys is, and it's very, very clear because there's been a lot more of playing with guys that are two-way players, with length and size that can handle pass, catch, shoot, defend multiple positions. The one thing that enables Steven to be so effective, in my opinion, is just his overall athletic ability and his foot speed and his quickness for a guy his size. He's, at times, we will have him switch on to guards, and we feel pretty good about that. He runs the floor, obviously offensive rebounds, but I think his feet, as good as his feet are, allow him to play in a game where, to your point, it's maybe gotten a game that's gone a lot smaller.
Billy, when Russell's not playing, he can be engaged and he can point out some things to guys from the sideline or whatever, but do you count on guys like Steven and Paul who are out there on the court to kind of guide along newer guys?
Yes and no this time of year, because I think there's things that may be a little bit different that they're trying to learn and absorb as well. The biggest thing is I think what they're doing a good job of in practice, even after drills or a segment or when guys are off to the sides, they're trying to communicate on just different things that are going on in between the lines, which is positive. I always think from a leadership standpoint, everybody's style is a little bit different, when it comes to leadership. I think Paul's got, good leadership qualities about the way he does. He does a really good job. Like we were doing a drill earlier today, just working on, certain kind of cuts and screens. And, Diallo was guarding Paul in the drill and was having a hard time. And, Paul took the time after the drill and pulled him aside and was like explaining stuff. Like I would look at that as a form of leadership. Steven kind of does the same thing, or Russell's out there talking about, we need to pick it up. This is not good enough. We need, So I think everybody, those guys, when they're involved in leadership, everybody leads to, I think, their personality. And that's what you want to do, because when you do that, it comes across genuine and authentic and real. But they've all tried to contribute and help each other while things are going on, which has been really positive.
What group is Bob Baer? Is that how you say his last name? Baer. Okay. What group is he working with primarily, and what's been his influence so far in camp?
Well, I mean, we got him working with a lot of different players. I mean, we've tried to coaches spend time with all these guys. I mean, he's worked with Paul, he's worked with Raymond, Jeremy. I think Bob's really, really a veteran, experienced guy. He's a great guy. Obviously, I've got a long history with the Van Gundys. I know obviously he's been a Stan for a long time and got a long relationship with Mark Jackson. We work with the Golden State. So, like, people that I trust, really, really spoke extremely highly of him, not only as a basketball coach, but as a person. He's without question, both of them.